This podcast was sponsored by and recorded at Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you may be listening. We welcome you back to another edition of the Vickers Crossing podcast, coming to you from Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park Road in London. And my name is Rob Henderson, and I'm the rector and priest at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's Anglican Church, London.
It's exciting that
It
you
is.
are. It really is.
Thanks.
My name is Kevin, and equally exciting, I'm the priest at St. Aidan's Church here in London, Ontario. If you're in Sri Lanka right now listening to this and you have any further questions, please give me a call. I'll explain exactly where it is in the city.
Very good, very good. Well, we're glad you're back again. We've had a couple of weeks break since we've been able to get together, so it's good to do that again. And,
You know why?
And why, Kevin?
Because of Ian.
Was that
Producer
Ian's
Ian.
fault?
Hello. Yeah, it's my
Yeah,
fault.
what were you doing last week?
All weeks. No, so last week, this week, and then next week I have Kiwanis Music
Right,
Festival.
Right.
Yeah.
And what were you doing at Kiwanis? Give us a little
So
visual of
Ballet.
Ian at Kiwanis.
Oh,
Were you
okay.
dancing?
No, I wasn't dancing.
Okay.
So last week was choir. So I performed in the concert choir, the chamber choir, and the men's choir at Central. And that was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
Friday was my birthday, so happy birthday me.
Happy birthday. And
guess what else?
it was Rob's
Yeah,
birthday.
it was also Rob's birthday.
I
Same
found
day.
out on that morning on Facebook that he and I had the same birthday.
Well, there you
So
go.
there
Happy birthday to both of you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. We need to talk more, Ian.
We
Yeah.
do,
We
definitely.
don't know each other.
100%.
Yeah.
And then this week, Monday I had senior band challenge class.
Okay.
And then Tuesday I had wind ensemble. And then yesterday
I have wind ensemble every day.
And then,
we don't need to know that. That's not an ensemble.
Playing here all week, folks.
That's a solo if there ever was one.
and then yesterday I had senior band again, but this was the A class. So yeah.
So how did you place in on all these? Did you get
We-
the results?
We didn't win the trophy.
It was the Russian judge. It's always the Russian judge.
A little bitter, but no, we did really well. Like we got gold standard, so
Good.
that's
Wonderful.
good.
Congratulations.
Yeah, all right.
Well
Yeah.
done.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, in a minute we're going to get back to Ian because I think we have a something for asking
very,
Ian anything.
very,
so
very
we're gonna
important
get to
segment,
that
yeah.
in just
Absolutely.
a minute. And you want to welcome our guest?
Yeah,
here,
we're
Kevin,
really
and get him into the
fortunate
mix here?
this week that we have our friend Ken Eastwood with us. Ken is host of the morning show on CJBK Radio here in London, Ontario, and I get to hang out with him on Thursday mornings on a round table. And so now we get to do Turnabout and welcome Ken Eastwood here. So welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good
Yeah.
to see you.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
you got him right where you want him now.
Do
Tables
I?
are reversed
Do
a
I
little
think
bit,
it's
are
the
they,
other way
or-
around, though.
Yeah,
I think
is
This
it
is
the
the
other way
exact
around?
opposite. Yeah.
I think he had me where he wanted me the last 2 weeks. Ken is the guy who gets me in trouble on Thursday mornings just so that
Yeah.
the people on Twitter can
Yeah.
send me messages and tell me what I'm saying and not saying.
Yeah.
And always with the hand on the delay button, right? 'Cause
I
Kevin's
wish.
in the
7-second
studio.
delay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wish. This is the one misconception people have about radio is
Yeah.
that there's that 7-second
Oh,
delay.
okay.
No
That does
7
not exist.
All right.
It is
Not there anymore. All right. Well,
No. Well, that gives me
that
permission.
gives
Yeah.
permission for Kevin.
This could get dangerous.
Right.
What do you got going on there, old buddy, over at yours this Lenten time of year
Yeah,
for you
well,
guys?
we're continuing to work our way through Lent and toward Holy Week coming up quickly and Easter Sunday, of course. And I said last week or 2 weeks ago I was going to give a little bit of plug to something we were doing.
Yeah.
We're getting
I've
ready
been
for a
waiting
special
on bated
event.
breath.
I know you have.
Edge of my seat.
That's
Yeah.
right. We're getting ready for a special Sunday. I think it's going to be now the second Sunday in May. It's called Stuffy Sunday.
Oh.
And it's not about being stuffy at church.
Everybody
and-
with a cold.
and nothing like that. But we have a couple of ladies in our parish who are looking to do some support for ANOVA,
Oh, nice.
which is something that I know is dear
Yeah.
to your heart as well. And
Yeah.
oftentimes what happens when some of the women come into ANOVA that are seeking shelter, they have children with them.
Yes.
And one of the things that really helps is that the child have something to comfort them. So we're having Stuffy Sunday to bring in stuffy toys
Nice.
to be able to donate to ANOVA and
So
do
what
that.
Sunday are you doing that?
I think it's the second Sunday in May, whatever
Nice.
that Sunday is.
So you're listening out there right now, and you want to participate in this, you can drop them off to Holy Trinity.
Yeah, bring
St.
them out to the
Stephen's.
church, and we're going to just all set them up under the altar. That'll be our gift that day, but we want to make sure that people, especially the kids, are supported. That can be a real traumatic thing, obviously. And
Nicely done.
And so, so we're going to have some fun with that, too. And looking forward to that. So, what about you? What's going on? You got something Saturday, right?
Yeah, we have Sister Sue Mosteller, who is a longtime friend of Henry Nouwen, the writer. And we've been doing, in our book group through Lent, we've been studying a book called The Return of the Prodigal Son, which was Nouwen's reflection on Rembrandt's painting, which he sat in front of for 4 hours in St. Petersburg and came away and wrote this book. I could not sit in front of a painting for 4 hours. Let me just say, I can't sit in front of a TV for 4 hours. I'll never make it 4 hours in front of a
paint's
painting.
already dry. So
yeah,
it's
no,
not
it's
like
you're not even watching it. But nonetheless, it's a really profound book, and it's sold like over 300,000 copies
really
and all
good.
this. But anyway, she's mentioned in the book because she was his really good friend and sort of a confidant, and so she had some pretty deep conversations with him, and she's able to share a little bit of the background around the book. So she and a colleague of hers, Joe Egan, Sister Sue, is now she's been doing this for a long time, let's just say that. And so now she brings Joe along with her. Joe is working in L'Arche in Toronto at the Daybreak, where Henry Nouwen lived for 40 years. So the both of them have a long-term history in the L'Arche community, and a number of people from L'Arche, London, are going to be with us that day, which is fun, because they're such a hard-working group of people. For those who don't know or are listening, L'Arche works with the mentally handicapped, and they provide incredible support for people who need it. And Henry's life was defined by that in the end. He was a scholar, he was a teacher, he was an incredible priest, and he walked away from Harvard and Yale to go live in Toronto with the mentally handicapped and to provide care for Adam. And he wrote about that as well, his companion Adam. So we're just excited. We've got 50 or so people coming out to hear Sister Sue and Joe, and the Henry Nouwen Society is going to be with us that day to record it so that they've got it to use for other opportunities. And so we're pretty excited by that. And other than that, I'm just trying to stay out of trouble, such as I am. You know, I try to keep a low profile. And
constant battle for Kevin.
Good luck with that. That's right.
Keeping as low a profile as possible, and that's really not very true. But in the meantime, I'm taking a look here, seeing that the two of you are enjoying a nice sudsy beverage. I, on the other hand, gave up sudsy beverages for Lent.
You did.
And then the doctor threw it right over the top when she said, "Here, hey, do you people remember having Kasia here to just a couple of guests back, right?"
Yeah,
so she happens to work with trying to keep my diabetes on track, and she determined I was no longer going to be imbibing on that, because she's now giving me a different form of a beverage. Well, it's not a beverage; it's insulin.
That's right.
But so what are you drinking there?
I have no idea. What did you buy?
You got 8-track.
I got an 8-track from Chatham.
Chatham,
right?
Sons of Kent.
Yeah,
Lovely.
Yep.
I have a beautiful Ace Hill.
Ace Hill is from Toronto.
Lovely.
Yeah.
You can drink all of those beverages here. You'll find them in this incredible place called.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
There's
I have
a lot
water.
of taps here at Crossings that you can enjoy. So
When we had Steven, the manager, on here, I think he rattled off 28.
yeah, he did a whole litany of
28,
taps. Yeah,
30 taps,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Impressive.
It was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What keeps Ken busy when you're not waking up at 4:00 in the morning to go to work?
You just answered your own question. A lot of napping.
Napping.
A
Yeah,
lot of napping
yeah.
keeps Ken busy. Right now, this time of year, it is still a lot of training as a amateur triathlete or a wannabe triathlete, and looking forward to getting outside. And now that the weather's just starting to finally turn, can't wait to get out on the bike and get outside.
He's been in the pool.
Yeah. A lot of time going back and forth in a pool.
Indoor, I hope.
Indoor pool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw a post on social media the other day that said he swam 2 kilometers.
Get out.
Really?
Yeah.
2 kilometers.
That was a
So-
slow day, was it?
2 kilometers
slow
is
day?
2 kilometers is a sprint.
Yeah.
I was impressed that it was 2 kilometers. So what's a more average distance for you?
An average swim workout for me would be about 3 to 4 kilometers.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Well, I've driven 4 kilometers today.
Oh, and you're out of breath.
and I'm out of breath
afterwards,
just
too,
turning
so-
the wheel.
exactly. Yeah. So a workout and basically a week for me is I just swim for fun on a Monday.
Wow.
Do what I call a breathing and form swim workout on Wednesday, and then Fridays are long swims.
Okay.
So Friday, for example, tomorrow I'm supposed to swim 8,000 meters.
Wow.
And what was
How many
that?
lengths would that be?
That would be about 300 and
300 plus lengths. Oh, jeez, holy smokes.
Hey,
Now.
Siri.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot
That is
of
a lot
water.
of going back and forth mindlessly in the water.
Yeah, I do a similar thing, but
What a visual.
it's very similar, Ken. But it's in a much smaller pool.
Uh-huh.
It's almost a
bathtub?
tub.
Like the
It's
length-
a tub.
length of your
it's
body
the length of my body.
with a
little
shower
less.
above it?
Yeah,
300
yeah.
lengths
And then,
in the tub.
with an appropriate beverage.
And with water wings,
Yeah,
too,
well,
which is a
yeah.
real
Put
sight.
water wings
Yeah.
in just in case I drown.
That's right. Well, we want to delve more into that, Ken.
There is
and some
reason
other
behind
things.
There is a
Yeah.
reason, yeah.
And some other things as part of the podcast today. But first, we want to check in with Ian again because
Yes.
once again, it's that point in the show that's
That
just
incredible segment.
This has just gone out of control.
We can't contain
It's
it
out of
anymore.
control.
We can't contain it.
Another edition of, ladies and gentlemen, Ask Ian Anything.
Wow.
Suspense.
The suspense. Well, Ian, I have been on the social media, the
That's
Twitter as they call it, and
Wow.
the Facebook. And I've sent messages out to your many fans.
Wow.
And the questions continue to roll in. In fact, it's hard to filter through. Some of it is just not fit for consumption on this public forum. So I'm afraid some of these questions are just too much. I mean,
Of course.
I don't want to make you blush, so I won't ask those. But it was a very important question that came in this week, and it was from a listener who wanted to know about an event you've got coming up on Wednesday.
Yes.
It was a listener who said they've heard that you're receiving an award in the City of London this week,
Yes.
and they wanted to know what that award was, why you're receiving it, and how you feel about it.
All right. Okay. I feel like I'm doing an introduction.
Well, yeah.
Introduce, brother.
I don't know why. Anyway. So I'm receiving. What's the actual title? Like the Oak Ridge
Optimist.
Optimist.
Yeah.
I got something right.
I belong to the pessimist group of Oak Ridge.
The Optimist Volunteer Award. I think that's what it's
I
called.
think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Youth volunteer.
Youth Volunteer Award. I was nominated by Morgan Sherlock, who is the youth dude at St. Aidan's.
He is.
That's his official title, by the way.
It is.
I was nominated because of what I do for Kevin, basically.
No, you don't do it for me.
Well, yeah. No, I do it for fun, but
Yeah.
So like things through the podcast, through like me playing at the church, and other fun stuff like that.
Good.
Yeah.
So he's going to be, and so this will happen Wednesday night,
Yeah, April the 10th.
and your folks will be there, or what?
Yep.
I'm going to be there.
Yep.
There might be a couple of middle-aged priests
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Couple
hearing.
of guys,
Yeah.
couple
Yeah.
of dudes.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's as a part of his receiving the award, I hear he's also going to play
Very
yeah,
good.
I am going to play. I'm going to be playing 2 songs.
2 songs
2 songs.
Maybe the middle-aged priest would be in the front row screaming.
with our lighters.
Yeah, with our lighters. Here we go. That won't embarrass you.
No, that's the highlight of the show.
That's what every young high school student wants.
Yeah.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's get over to Ken here. I want to chat a bit more, and we're glad you're with us. Maybe just a little brief update on your journey, where you're from, what brings you to London, a little bit about yourself.
Well, as a radio person and with a radio background, you'll understand that it's much like being in the military. It sort of comes with a lot of travel. Been around the country a couple times, Ottawa, Saskatchewan, back to Ottawa, but born and semi-raised in Clinton,
Okay.
north of town.
Sure.
Did my education in the Ottawa Valley. Like I said, then radio kind of took me across the country, but been in London for about 20 years now at various radio stations, but all of them requiring me to get up at a ridiculous hour of the day. And, I think regardless of what happens from this point on, London's going to be home no matter what happens.
Yeah.
I will find something to. I want to say bag groceries, but people don't do that anymore, do they?
No, you can't bag them.
Would you like to purchase a bag?
Yeah, you could be that guy. Yeah.
It comes with a lot of scorn
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Do you what? Because I never bring the bags, right? So they look at me and say,
right.
No.
would you like to purchase a bag?
So little aside, you know what my favorite thing to do is? Forget the bags. Just pile everything back into the cart.
Yes.
That's
and
right.
then just take it out to the car,
Yeah.
pile
Pile it
everything
into the
loose
car.
into
Yeah.
the trunk.
I love it.
And then take it home and then ask my lovely son, like, oh, there's some groceries
Yeah,
in the
that's
trunk.
right.
Yeah.
Would you mind bringing
Help
those
me
in?
with the groceries. Yeah.
Two at a time, son.
You know, one at a time.
We like the grapes in clumps.
Yeah. But I digress. As you introduced me off the top, I'm host of the morning show at News Talk 1290, and with my current co-host, Loreena Dixon, though I'm told I go through them like
He does.
Kevin used to go through beverages. But
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So just thinking about, Ken is, I've gotten to know Ken because of the radio station. I've also gotten to know the stuff that he's doing outside of that, and a very considerate and decent and kind human being that he is, and his heart for compassion. And a part of what we talk about here is we talk about sort of faith in the public square and all that stuff and where they intersect. And one of a lot of the interesting conversations that you and I have had, Rob, and certainly you and I have had too, Ken, in different settings, has been around the fact that, not everybody has come up in a faith background. Mm-hmm. And I think you would probably define yourself that way, that you didn't come up in church. A little bit about that?
Right. So, I was thinking on this a little bit today as well, because, ahead of this, you asked what my faith background is. And that's a tough question to answer, I think. And I think people will just default to putting whatever label it is that they've grown. Oh, I'm Catholic, or I'm Anglican, or I'm United, or my parents brought me up Jewish, but I don't practice, or something like that. So I was trying to think of what's my label.
Yeah.
And
Celebrate if you don't have one, Ken.
yeah.
So,
So I have called myself atheist in the past, but that's not accurate. Plus, it has just so many negative connotations.
Yeah.
People turn their nose up when you say you're atheist. I don't like using that. Agnostic is a good one, but even that I don't think is an accurate description of. In fact, I think for everybody, that's a negative thing to put a label on their faith, even if you say I'm Catholic or whatever. Because I think how each individual person interprets whatever God in their life is so individual that it diminishes it by putting a label on it.
right.
So, I think probably the closest thing would be to describe myself as an agnostic, but I do believe in God.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Well,
It does, yeah, very much
So,
so.
but I think it's just
What is that, right?
what is God
what is that?
a
Yeah.
really different
And
thing.
it's around the thing that we've talked about so often here. It's around the questions and the mysteries and the whys and the why nots. And sometimes I can see it, and other days I can't. And you the push and pull and back and forth. And and when you encompass that all together holistically, that's what it is. You just and you try to put a name on it, but
Exactly.
Yeah, and we being you and I, Rob, and more than the other two here, but we hang out in a land in a reality where that's sort of the language that gets used a lot, right? Just stuff is always sort of pinned down, nailed down, labeled down. What we've been learning is that I think there's a increasing hunger out there with a lot of people around what they believe or don't believe, around their questions, really. So a lot of people will say, well, I believe in something. I don't know what it is. It's larger than me. I believe that there's something larger in life than my own efforts and my own self and all of that. And part of the struggle for those of us who hang out in church land and wear funny clothes and all that is trying to make room for that sort of honest discourse and honest questioning and honest seeking, because it can be really hard to walk into a community where everybody at least presents as though they know all the answers.
Yeah. You're right, and I think that's where the church is, at least based on St. Aidan's, evolving. And I think, much like anything in this day and age, church and religion has to evolve with attitudes.
Yeah. And we got some who can't even hear the word evolve.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. You know what? Everything fits nicely in that little box.
Of course.
Right,
And if we start shaking things up, then those boxes just don't fit anymore.
That's right.
And there's different ways. Like, there's those that want to progress and move forward. There's those that would stay in more of you call them a conservative spot, where they say everything's good here. Yeah. Let's just stay. And then there's the other way, which is it was better back then.
Right.
So let's find a way to pull us back to
the good old
days, or when everything fixed was made sense to us, and that sort of thing. So and you see all those three kind of movements in faith communities and even in the culture as a whole, right? Yeah.
And so we've got a whole group of people in the church and people who write about this and study such things. I mean, we talk about people who are spiritual but not religious. People who are full of all the questions. Reginald Bibby, years ago, a social scientist here in Canada from the University of Alberta or University of Lethbridge, one of the two anyway, he wrote a book called Restless Gods, and it got all the Anglicans in a Twitter. That was before Twitter. We got in a
anyway.
Twitter, and people were getting all upset. I think his previous book was something about. Was that the book that was titled "God is Dead" or something like that?
Okay.
I can't remember, I don't know if that was him.
Yeah,
but
Bibby.
that book.
I think so.
But Bibby really upset a bunch of people back in the day. This is about 25 years ago. But in Restless Gods, which is a really good book, he said that, and we're talking about people Ian's age 25 years ago.
Hello.
Right? Yeah, you're there. I know. And so, and what he said about people Ian's age 25 years ago was, they're not without belief in a higher being. And they're not without the questions that most of us who are trying to live in some sort of a spiritual world have. They just very rarely anymore find that in church.
That's a good point. Yeah. I would take that one step further, even beyond the belief of a higher power. It's about faith.
Yes.
When I say I believe in God, I don't necessarily believe in a God of anyone else's creating but what exists in my own heart, if that makes any sense. I mean, I have faith, I have compassion, I have love, I have all the things that are described in not just the Bible, but basically every
good religious text.
Every
religious text.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't believe that that's something that was created for me. I believe that's something that is inherent in me that I express. And if someone expresses that as a belief in God, good for them.
Yes.
Or if someone expresses that as a belief in the flying spaghetti monster, and that means that
one of my personal favorites.
And that's what brings them to a place of love and compassion and faith and hope, then I say that's God too.
Yeah.
That's not your God, but
Right. And when it comes to, I mean, I guess one of the questions I have is, how does all of that, what you feel in terms of you believe in something, you don't define it the way that some others might and all that stuff. How does all that come into play? You can share with our listeners a little bit more, but just a couple of years ago now, you lost your son, Duncan.
Yeah.
And as I've come to learn about that and to know you more, my heart breaks over that story and what you went through and what your wife Nora went through. And by way of context, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with those who listen, and then perhaps a little bit about what sort of questions does that drag out of your being?
Big ones.
And right? And how does one, in the midst of those sorts of crises, navigate all of that? I mean, there's a way that many people in faith communities do it, but if you're not deeply rooted in one, how do you navigate that? So there's a lot in there, but perhaps to start a little bit about Duncan, about who he was, who he is to you, and what happened, and then we can talk some more after about your response to that and your ongoing activities.
Right. So in March of 2016, our eldest son, Duncan, was just kind of starting his life, getting set to move on to a new city. He was moving from London to Hamilton to follow a job, and had a bit of a chest cold. And as a busy 21-year-old guy, as a guy too,
Yeah, as a guy, yeah.
he ignored it. It'll get better. He had visited the doctor before that, and the doctor gave him some medicine. He took it and got better. So it came back, kind of a nagging cough, and he ignored it. He eventually did go to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You got to go get a chest x-ray. I'm not going to give you any medicine until you go get this chest x-ray." I don't have time. I'll put that off. It'll get better. It got worse to the point where he started coughing up blood.
Wow.
And then on May 2nd, went into the hospital in Hamilton at Joe Brandt Hospital at 8 o'clock at night, sent me a text and said, "I finally took your advice. I'm going in to get this taken care of." And then at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 3rd, on the Wednesday, we got a call from the hospital saying his heart has stopped a couple of times and you're going to have to come to the hospital, which is just, that's the kind of moment that just turns your whole life upside down, and you don't even realize it at the time.
Scared the shit out of you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? And thinking back on it, it didn't. It confused me. I didn't understand what was going on.
Right.
I had no real comprehension. That came, unfortunately, as we had made like an hour-long drive to the hospital, which is not a good time to realize that your son is dying.
Right.
When you're on a highway.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, fast forward past the worst week of our lives, when we had to say goodbye to our son and say hello to a bunch of family who wanted answers. And we didn't really have answers. Like the hospital, I mean, we knew he was sick, but in the words of one of his uncles, 21-year-old guys don't just suddenly die. It just doesn't. It just doesn't happen. So we learned later on that it was something called sepsis, where and as a PSA, sepsis is the body's overwhelming response to any kind of infection. Any infection left untreated can turn into sepsis. You maybe have heard it called septic shock or blood poisoning, or sometimes in the media, damn media.
There's people who work in the media.
No kidding. You'll hear it called complications from.
Right.
Frequently it's complications from pneumonia,
Right.
which is what they would have described Duncan's condition as. But yeah, it's called sepsis, and it is one of the biggest killers, not just in Canada, it's throughout North America, and that is one of the things that I've been advocating for, is more education for sepsis. But so to answer your question, specifically about faith, when something like that happens, and I think this is partly where my belief comes from, but it's also, I think what happened to Duncan solidified my belief that we as human beings are super evolved. In fact, I think human beings are more evolved than we should be.
Yeah.
We ask a lot of questions that we just can't answer.
Right.
Like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Why do we leave?
Yeah.
What's beyond that?
Yeah. Where do we go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And through eons, human beings have been asking those questions again and again and constantly, and could not come up with an answer.
Right.
So somebody did.
Yeah.
And the answer for some of those people is, well, after you die, you're reincarnated as a chicken. After you die, you go to this lovely place where there's
Lots of chicken to eat.
lots of chicken
Fried
to eat.
chicken.
and beer
And beer.
good stuff and all kinds of fun stuff. And then there are
Pudding.
And then there are people who just believe that, you know what, when it's all over, it's over, and
You're dirt.
and you're dirt. Exactly. So when something tragic in your life happens, I think it's, and I've seen it happen a lot. It happened to my very own sister. My older sister, lost a child shortly after he was born, and turned to her faith, and that gave her
That
comfort.
gave her the strength to get through it.
Absolutely did. For me, what gave me the strength was knowing that I'm still here, knowing that he was here, and I can do a lot of stuff while I'm here to make my life count and to make his life count.
Yeah.
And that's the journey I'm on now, making it count.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that instead of, thoughts about the questions that we ask about what happens after, that your focus now is what we do with life? You know what I mean? Like, like you say,
you're right.
That's the focus.
I think you're right. We spend a lot of time, thinking about death and, fearing death when that energy so much more effectively could have been put into thinking about life and thinking about, at some point this is all going to end for you, but you're going to be in a position where you're going to look back and think, did I use my time effectively? Did I do the things that were important to me when I had the opportunity?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I resonate with that in a sense too, because it's, I grew up in a time, and I grew up in the church. It was just part of what we did.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of focus on that, in the sense of what happens afterwards, and what you do today is about what happens afterwards. So it's life today for something better tomorrow. And what turned for me was to finally have an understanding that the God that I've discovered and the God that I've found in Scripture through my faith and through my journey is the one that's concerned about the world in its form now.
Yeah.
And saying this is redeemable and worthy and loved and all that, and all the other stuff about what happens after. That's not the biggest point here.
Yeah.
We got something to do today, and it's about life. And how are you going to focus on that? Right? Yeah.
And where that becomes sort of applicable for me in terms of the Christian context, or the follower of Jesus in terms of his teaching, for me, where that becomes important is I think that we've, for far too long, we first of all take this life for granted, right? So we don't do all the stuff that, because, and look at a guy his age, right? Like, he's just a bit younger than Duncan would have been.
Yeah.
And he's not thinking about dying.
Right.
Nor should he obsess about it every day. But the other thing that sometimes he may not be thinking about is what a gift today is. Because you just think it's always going to be here, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's true that we all live that way. But it's also true that in terms of the teaching of Jesus, this life is just not some sort of a test run or a trial to get through till you get to the good part where the fried chicken and the pudding and the beer is.
Lots of chicken.
Pudding. It was pudding, beer. And so it also is, and the way that Jesus talked about it was about a new kingdom, right? And the words were, your kingdom come. And so it was about making a reality now, rather than worrying about something that's going to happen after we're dead and gone, and pushing up daisies, right? Like, it was really about what are we doing to make, if we believe that there's this, what some other religions might call a nirvana, if there's this reality, the way Jesus taught about it was, what are we doing to make that happen now? And so if we see somebody suffering, if we see somebody who's hungry, if we see somebody who needs some love and care and compassion, if we see a way to come alongside of those who are unaware and ignorant about things like disease and everything that goes with it, what are we doing about that? And if we live that way, for me, if we live that way and we teach people Ian's age here, something like that too, then there's some hope for us. I mean, instead of just sort of all waiting, or as you said earlier, pining about the good old days, or hoping for the new future when everybody is going to just love Jesus and we'll all be fine. And then some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away.
That song. Love that song.
Yeah. And so I think it's going to take a lot for this particular ball of clergy flesh to fly anywhere. And but I'm trying to make something happen now. True. And truthfully, Ken, I see a lot of what you do in terms of your response and the way you've picked up the pieces of your life, having lost Duncan, as a real testimony to what it looks like to make something happen now. Right. Like, you're really doing stuff now. Yeah.
Not to deride someone too who does, whose end goal is after.
No,
good for them. In fact, I think whatever your motivation is to do good things while you're here.
No, where I have a problem is when we actually harm others.
Yeah.
Because we believe that we've got some special right because we're going to some fine place.
Right,
Yeah.
and they're not.
Right.
It's we're in, you're out. So
And that's
Precisely.
and it
Yeah.
becomes a
Yeah.
cudgel, you know,
Yeah.
that you beat people with.
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So, sorry, I was talking about you. Do you have any feelings about what I just said, Ian?
At this age, are you concerned about your mortality?
Are you concerned about your mortality, Ian?
I
He's barely awake.
no, like I said, Kiwanis is a lot. I think that growing up and sort of kids, not even kids, like teens and I guess adults now because I'm 18.
I'm an adult now.
Just sort of the people I'm around, we all have questions that are much older than we are. And it all sort of comes back to that idea of why are we here, like where are we going, and sort of who or what or when did it start, like officially, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think, I know there's nights that I sort of am awake and thinking like, okay, like what did I do today? And sort of reflecting on the day rather than like, oh, tomorrow I need to do this and tomorrow I have this test. Like it's hard to appreciate the day when you're still in it, I guess, because everyone's so focused about what the future holds that it's very important to reflect on what you just went through, or not even went through, like what you just experienced in your day. Like your day might have been amazing or might have been really bad. You still need to like understand that is your
It's
day.
all part of the learning.
Yeah, and it's
exactly.
like you can't really go back and do it again.
Yeah, and the conversation I have too, like my kids, I have two boys and they're 21 and 23, and they're not thinking about that kind of stuff, right? They're just worrying about today, and that's it. And, and you know, why would they be thinking about that? But the conversations we often have is because there have been times in our family, and I know it happens in all, that something difficult comes into that. And then you're left there going, well, where am I going to explore all that? And how am I going to ask the questions? And because they're going to get to you at one point in your life, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not about that you should be thinking about it now, but to be cognizant of the fact that when they come, where are you going to explore the questions?
Yeah.
And you know, for me, it's been faith communities.
Yeah.
And that's been my place to explore those together as community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but whatever that is for you, it's a good thing to do that and know that that's going to happen for sure.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people my age are so focused with the futures because we're asked about it. Like we're of the age where we're deciding on post-secondary, so we're not really sort of
What are you
focusing
going
on.
to do after school?
Yeah,
What are you
basically.
gonna do when you grow
You know,
up?
if you keep eating that candy, your teeth aren't going to look too good in 20 years.
Hey,
Yeah,
are you shaving that thing yet?
We're all so focused about like what we're doing next year or the years after that like it's hard to appreciate the day. Like I took a nap in the practice room and there was like a couple of people who were my friends just chatting in the background. Like that was an experience that I woke up from my nap and I was like, this was a good day because I took a nap with my friends in the room. Yeah. Like that day's probably not going to happen the same way ever again. And it's just like, I need to appreciate it on that day. Well, like still understanding that the future is going to happen and I need to like prepare for it.
And then you're going to look back on that day years from now and it wouldn't have stood out today when it happened.
Yeah. No.
But years from now, you're going to think back and like, the good old days.
That's right. Yeah.
But what was I thinking doing that?
Well, maybe, but what's really impressive to me is that you're thinking about it because it's what we, in Eastern traditions talk about this a lot, but certainly even now in Christian churches we evolve, as to use the word Ken used earlier. It's called mindfulness.
Yeah.
You're being mindful and taking that time to be mindful of what was today. Where did I get it right?
Yeah.
Where can I improve on it?
Sure.
What is it? How has it changed me? Those sorts of mindful things that you're talking about, Ian, those will serve you because one of the reasons we keep you around because we have many people wanting to produce this program.
Oh, I know.
But
It's a lineup of people just waiting.
My email is full.
Oh yeah. So, but the reason we keep you around is because you're because of that emotional intelligence. I mean, that it's one thing for you to get the books straightened out and to do the work and to get into schools and do all that stuff. But I think that that sort of observation about asking those questions shows a high emotional intelligence. So.
Yeah.
So Ken, what about, you're talking about more awareness of sepsis and these types of things. What kind of things have you been involved with and that have kind of moved you forward in that to take care of things today that you can and make a difference?
I think it goes to to the mindfulness that Kevin was talking about. You know, after Duncan's death, there were things that I had in my life. There were components of my life that I wanted to be able to look back and go, those things mattered. Those were important things. I accomplished some key things in my life, and one of those became sepsis, and spreading awareness about that. Another became blood donation. I've been a blood donor since I was younger than Ian, and I committed to being more of an advocate for blood donation, and committed to doing it every week. Technically, it's not blood; it's plasma, but every week.
Something gets sucked out of his body every week.
Yeah, exactly. And just reassessing life as kind of like Ian said, taking every day and looking at it as a gift that I can do something good and make a change. So the sepsis thing, one of the other components of my life that I reassessed was my physical fitness. I've been kind of a runner up until that point, and a bit of a cyclist and a bit of a swimmer. And I decided, well, that can be another thing that I either do and make count or not.
Yeah.
So I decided to combine a couple of things and started doing triathlons. I guess that's combining three things. But also combining that with sepsis awareness. So I started going to running races, going to triathlons, and wearing a big-ass T-shirt.
Yes.
That says...
He looks good in it.
It does look good, and it gets attention, too.
It does.
Especially when you're running.
Yeah.
A big-ass T-shirt that says on the front, "Do it for Duncan," which kind of evolved from a hashtag I used on social media to become kind of a slogan.
Yeah.
And on the back, where people can see it when I'm running, says, "Ask me about sepsis."
Oh, okay.
And I had a lot of conversations that first year running in races where people would come up behind me, tap me on the shoulder, and say, "I'm asking you about sepsis."
There you go. Yeah.
And then have a breathless...
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What? Yeah.
if you get an infection in your lungs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What would be the one thing you would want someone to know if they're just listening now and saying, "Okay, Ken, tell me, what's the one thing that they should know?"
About sepsis?
Yeah.
It can happen, and it does happen. And I think we all have, whether you're a young guy like Ian or a crotchety old guy like Kevin,
81.
81 years old. Yeah. Happy birthday. It can happen to anybody, and it really can be as simple as there are stories about people who develop sepsis through a bladder infection, or people who literally through a hangnail.
Yeah.
A hangnail can kill you if you don't take care of your body.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the number one thing is listen to your body, listen to your doctor, and take action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he came out, Ken, to the church through our Silver Saints Seniors Ministry.
Oh, yeah.
And the poster was really quite cute because it said something like, and the way the secretary did the poster, it had like big drops of blood because of his blood donations. And it's
or
a
plasma.
Lunch.
Yeah.
It's a lunch, right? So the thing says,
Blood will not be served.
It says, "Come meet Ken Anderson and learn about sepsis." Come for lunch,
right.
meet Ken Eastwood, and learn about sepsis.
Who's this Ken Anderson?
Sorry, no, that was a Freudian slip. It's not Ken Anderson. Sorry, Ken. So Ken Anderson is a retired priest we know.
Yeah.
Who is this Ken Anderson? You know, it's just Ken is the name that throws me. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's my middle name. But anyway, no, I just I'm impressed with all the stuff that Ken does. And you know what? He's on radio, and people in radio get asked to do 1,000 things. And what's really cool is when he goes out to do these things in the community, he's always such a strong advocate for blood donation, for sepsis awareness, and all of that stuff. And I've come to really admire and love Ken because of his real kindness. You're a really kind man, and obviously, I just thinking about like my own family. My nephew lost 2 children, and my sister, the grandparent of these 2 girls, her grandma, she said to me, and I see this a bit in you, because she was talking about what it's like to go through that, and she said, there was a lot of shit that used to matter to me that doesn't matter anymore.
Bingo. Nail on the head.
Right.
Yeah.
And I see that in you. I see that you don't sweat about stuff that doesn't matter, and you spend your time focused on things that really can make a difference.
That's absolutely. And, I think not just the death of a child, particularly the death of a child.
Yeah, could be many things.
Could be anything that makes you reassess not necessarily the things in your life, but your attitude towards them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I went through. My wife and I don't talk about faith very much. We talk about pretty much everything, but the other day she asked me, we just got onto the topic of faith and, big questions like what it all means. And we happened to be sitting at the parking lot right in front of, don't judge me, right in front of the Dairy Queen at Beaverbrook.
Oh, no, I would not judge you. I would embrace you.
I will pray for your healing.
Thank you. We couldn't leave yet because our hands were occupied with ice cream.
I miss ice cream.
So we were sitting there, and there were squirrels, and I'm like, I think of life. I think of the life of a squirrel, and does a squirrel ask these big questions, or is it just concerned about its nuts? And
Well played, sir.
and I want to live my life more like a squirrel.
Yeah.
And not necessarily not ask the big questions, but not focus on the big questions. Just worry about my nuts.
Yes. Well,
Well,
I don't even know what to say about that.
And,
And folks here on the Vickers Crossing, you've heard it first. Ken Eastwood is focused on his nuts.
But that's the thing, though, Ken. If you could get into the squirrel's head,
Right.
the words that would be going through their heads was,
Nuts,
you know
nuts,
what?
nuts, nuts,
Everything
nuts,
we
nuts,
have right now is enough.
Exactly.
Everything I have right now in this
yeah.
very moment is enough. Now
is-
that double dip cone that guy sitting in the car has looks good, but what I have right now is enough.
Well, and I think that's the key. I was just reading an article, Kristen Powers, USA Today, about Pete Buttigieg, which is a great name to say, right? Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is
Buttigieg is running for
Yeah,
president.
and he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana,
Right.
and he's an incredible guy. He speaks 7 languages. He's a Rhodes Scholar, Afghan vet, volunteered to go there, gay man, running a small city in America, really engaged, faithful Christian, but he's not a part of the loudmouth religious right. He's a part of what increasingly now is being called the religious left.
Right.
And so he's become a little more outspoken about the need for those who see themselves in religious circles to look at more than just a few things that they get very concerned about. And to your point about, enough, we have enough, what we have in front of us is enough. His whole thing is that instead of being focused on the things that Jesus had a lot to say about, like poverty and hunger and injustice and people being stripped of their rights and beliefs and all that stuff, he says, a lot of the religious right are concerned about a few things he had very little to say about, like gay rights or abortion or those things, right? Yeah. So he says in this piece when he's interviewed by her that the whole thing really is it's become about excess and wealth and overabundance, and it's a real blasphemy to what Jesus really taught. And if we're going to reclaim that, then we have to be able to reclaim that notion of what you're talking about, which is what I've got here, this is enough. And Meister Eckhart put it this way: if the only prayer we ever uttered was thank you, that will be enough.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
That will be enough.
I think the what it comes down to is the really the only thing that matters. The top line questions shouldn't be, like you said, the minutia of the religion, regardless of what it is. It's about love and compassion. That's
right.
And
Broad strokes are there.
Yeah, exactly. If you use those criteria as a litmus test for the things you're doing in your life, and they pass that, then you're probably doing the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, one of the books we're studying right now in our parish is by a guy named Brian McLean.
McLaren.
McLaren, excuse
listen.
me. Yeah.
It's
I
not
know.
Ken Anderson. And it's not Brian McLean, okay?
Name issues today. Brian McLaren.
Who are you? Rob Anderson?
That's right. Who talks about that and asks questions around that in the church. It threw me off because I forgot my point I was going to make.
Well, it's that business, though, of being focused on the broad strokes of love and justice.
Right, and the idea being that our churches or our communities of faith, what would it look like for them to be schools of love? And we talked about that, where the purpose of coming together outside of worship and the other things that we do, which are important, but is to say we learn how to love and we learn how to say, I have enough. And to go out into the world and to be compassionate and be loving and to do that, as you say, that's the bottom line. So,
but
to create that.
The thing is, I think, off the top, I said that churches and religions are evolving, and I think it has a lot to do with people who recognize that. And Kevin George is one of those people. Because
Rob is another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've not.
Yeah, no, I know.
Have not experienced.
We just met.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I have no doubt he is as well, because I did not grow up in church.
Right.
I did not go to church, but I do go to church.
Mm-hmm.
I go to your church frequently because I recognize that for me, it's not a house of God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a house of love, compassion, acceptance, and there's good stuff going on in there.
That's right.
And I think if more churches approached welcoming people into their flock in that manner, I think they would see a lot more people coming to their church.
Well, and that's the business that Brian McLaren is talking
Right.
about. It's
Yeah.
because it's making room for people like Ken or anyone else who is not defining what they believe the way that others have in the past necessarily. And what he writes about is, instead of checking people's beliefs at the door like a bouncer, could you tell me what you believe, sir, before you come in? I just need to know if, instead of doing all that, it's welcome in, how can I love you today? Right?
Yeah.
And because that's what people want.
Exactly.
They want to be loved.
Which is what we're called to do.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Precisely.
So let's just do that.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. So Ian's throwing stuff at us over here.
Ian's
We're running
getting
out of
really
time.
irate. I mean, he must have a hot date at the end of this.
Our reel-to-reel tape, Ken, is running out. So
Do you know where I found him, by the way, today?
No.
And it ended up with an episode between me and London's Finest. But
of course.
I found him on the street demonstrating because of the cuts that the Ford
Oh,
government
with
are making to
horn
education.
honking and
Good job, Ian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
He
Yeah,
was
I was
down in
very
front of
proud of
City
you.
Hall. He was speaking up for justice, and he was speaking up and saying, no, we can't have this. These cuts are untenable. And I was glad to hear him there. And then eventually I'm like, where is he in this mass of people? And then eventually I had the sunroof open. There's this hand coming through. I'm here, but I got to go get my bag out of the thing. So I get out to take a picture of these kids in front of the thing, and London's Finest is there. And they said, is that you I just saw park your car in front of a no parking sign?
Oh.
And I said, well, I'm just going to take a picture. He said, that's not what he said, you're in front of the no parking sign. I said, yeah, I'm just going to take the picture, and I'm going to get back in the car.
So what you're telling us is you argued with a cop.
I did. I had a debate.
No.
We have the evidence right here.
There's an argument.
With a
No,
cop.
yes. Yeah, okay.
Because you were doing something illegal.
Yes.
Okay.
All
right.
true. But, I was like, just calm down.
But he loved him anyway.
Uh-huh.
I didn't
That
get
was the main thing.
The good news is I didn't get arrested.
That's right. You made it here in time.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Well, Ken, we want to thank you for dropping by and spending the time with us and sharing your story. It's a powerful one.
My
And I know people that are listening will be not only moved by it, but
Absolutely.
I think stirred to
Yeah.
really take a look at where they are. And that's important. So we thank you for that.
Thank you for the invitation.
And you can hear Ken on CJBK News Radio, 1290 AM on CJBK. Is that
old
jingles
jingle
right there.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I sing it differently. I have the hard rock version.
CJBK.
So,
Good. Every morning from
6 till 9
6
each
to
and every
9.
weekday
All right.
morning. Yep.
Very good.
you can hear me on there on Thursday on the round table, and Ken will tell everybody on the radio he was on here, and then this thing.
Oh, this is going to
it's
explode.
It's going to go
Look
through.
out. Nuts.
It's going to
Yeah.
go viral.
That's right.
It's going to go viral.
No clue
No
how
clue,
far
man.
and
It's
wide this
crazy.
is going to go.
You and the bishop, man, are like gold in this thing.
They're bringing them in. Bringing them in. All right. Ian, thanks for dropping by. We'll see you in a week or two. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for all your help, Kevin.
right.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I'm going to stress for the next couple days about my Habs and whether they're going to get in or not.
Into the playoffs. Yeah.
You know they're not.
Big couple nights coming up here.
Being a Red Wings fan, I've had no stress around that all season long.
yeah, no,
It's been
thank you.
wonderful.
Good for
I
you,
don't even
yeah.
have to think about it.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here, everybody. Until we get back together again, this is the Vickers Crossing again from Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park Road in London. And until we get together again, remember always, Kevin, to look both ways.
Before you cross the street.
Thank you for listening. Our hosts are Kevin George and Rob Henderson. Our producer and composer is myself, Ian, with original artwork done by Catherine Olenek. If you have any questions or want to know how to find us, tweet us at Vickers Crossing or find us on Facebook at The Vickers Crossing. If you have any other questions about anything heard on this podcast, look in the description to find out more. Thanks!